We have with us tonight Nikki Denofrio and Andrew Gallegos and Curtis Fischer-Oelschlaeger. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves. And we're going to start tonight just by letting them kind of give you a sense of where they're working in the state and with whom they're working and what it feels like for them. What does this time look and feel like? Why don't we start? Let's start. Nikki, would you start us out?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Really nice to see so many people here. I think this is really pertinent right now as I'm sort of understanding that a lot of folks are still not or are just about to go hybrid. I'm the vocal director at Carl Sandburg High School in Orland Park. It's District 1. We host, so I'm noticing some of these names actually who may not be District 1, but I've seen around. So welcome in. We have been hybrid since just after Labor Day. We were 25% of the student body in the building on any given day. They were separated out into 4 cohorts, A, B, C, D, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Wednesday has been fully remote for us for deep cleaning, still is. About third week of October, we got told on a Friday that starting that next Monday, we were going to 50% with no planning time. So I got moved from my little choir room to the stage, which is kind of cool, but also you can't hear your kids. But we've found ways to work to make that work. So if things come up in questions, I'm happy to kind of get into that. But we're at 50% right now at Sandburg, fully 50%. We have been now since about the end of October. So we've been in it for quite a while. Good things, bad things, tough things, all, I think as all the rest of the panelists will mention too. But that's kind of a little bit of where I'm at. So I can pass it over to one of the other guys.
Andrew, you want to share your story next? Thanks.
Sure. Let me turn off my little space heater here. Okay. Andrew Gallegos. I'm directing choir at Olympia Middle School and High School. We are out in the cornfields about 20 minutes west of Bloomington Normal, so right outside of ISU, Illinois Wesleyan. We have been, depending on your perspective, but we've been pretty fortunate to be 100% in person every day. Our district, I think, is small enough to where we don't have to battle, a larger potential spread of COVID. So I've been blessed to see my kids all in person every day. The quarantine's in and out here and there, so they'll occasionally miss. If you're one of the smaller schools in this chat too and have a one grouped high school choir of freshmen through seniors, then you could probably relate to how awesome that would be, especially if you have underclassmen that kind of depend on those upperclassmen for strength. Just a little bit about Olympia. We used to run one high school choir where it was like 75, 88 strong, depending on the year. But this year they had to split us up. They did it kind of funky though. I wish they had done it in a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior perspective, but they kind of evened it out to where it was freshman, senior one group, freshman, senior the other, which, you think balance would be good, but I kind of have ended up with a strong group on one end and a not so strong group on the other. And it kind of stinks for those upperclassmen that are trapped in that not so strong group. So there's been a little bit of tension in there, but at the end of the day, I'm just really glad to be able to be making music with them. Kind of similar to Nikki's perspective, my classes are too big to adequately space in my room, so I am forced to take them into the auditorium every day. I did some numbers on our filtration system. We're doing the 6 feet apart, 30 minutes in the auditorium. But thankfully we have an air change rate of 3.95 times an hour. So every 15 minutes, there's one air change. So I structure the periods to where on a block schedule, I'll do 30 minutes of skill work in the room, whether it's rhythm, theory, just some kind of non-singing activity. Then we transition into the auditorium for the last 30 minutes of the block, do our rehearsal, and then I recycle that process for every class period so that there's at least 2 air changes between each block. And we're kind of staying within that NFHS regulation of at least 1 per group being in that space. I'm also pretty thankful that our school has practice rooms and larger vicinities where we can break out into sectionals too. So if I'm planning on a full block of singing in those 60, 65 minutes, we can utilize the different spaces and then come back to the auditorium and still stay within that 30-minute regulation in whatever spot we're in. So that's kind of where I'm at. We're doing some good things, but of course we're running into some problems, and I'm sure we'll talk about that here later on tonight. So
Thanks, Andrew. Curtis, I think it's all you, man.
All right, I am Curtis Fischer-Oelschlaeger. I am at Rockridge Junior and Senior High School. We are just outside the Quad Cities. Our district actually runs along the Mississippi River. We're District 2. Our school started in a hybrid format for the beginning of the year, and we were hybrid through November, the second week of November. At that point, we went to full attendance. Currently, my 6th grade and my 7th, 8th grade choirs are small enough that they can meet in my room where we have everything 6 feet distance and we are always masked. The high school choir meets in 3 30-minute blocks. So I have the women for a half an hour, everybody for half an hour, and then the men for a half an hour. And we do that in the auditorium with them spread out in the seats, and I'm up on the stage with a microphone. Yeah, it's been fun and challenging, but being able to sing with them every day, I am understanding more and more. It has really been a blessing as I'm seeing the city schools here are still not in full person. So it's been good, and we've had a lot of good things happen and a lot of challenging things. I'm also the theater director at Rockridge, and we were able to produce 4 radio plays through the fall and the winter that were actually broadcast on the radio. And that allowed us to, that was something completely different. And then we're currently working on our musical, which again, we're doing working. So it allows us to be socially distanced at all times and have masks on the whole time. So that goes up in 3 weeks.
'Tis the season for the musical, I think, in some of our places. And yeah, they look different for sure. A little bit about what's going on at Downers Grove North. Downers Grove's about 20-25 miles directly west of downtown Chicago. And at our school, there's been kind of, I guess, a mix of a lot of different things. We started the year under a fully remote plan. And one of the things that I think our district has done well is they've planned the day and they've kind of split the day so that there's a kind of a large middle portion of the day that allows for students and teachers to talk together. And then that lunch period is kind of happening during that time as well. And so that's kind of where we started the year. There's been a lot of community pressure to get students back in school. And so some of that was tried in November. And we got kind of through 2 weeks of it, and then we had another surge, and so that kind of, we backed off that. But since we got back after winter break, we've been in a hybrid situation where we sort of moved from our regular 8-period day to a block schedule where we sort of have even class periods one day and odd class periods the other day. And what we have going now is half of our students in any given choir are reporting to us after a fully remote Monday, Tuesday and Thursday, let's say, for a particular choir. Half of those students are going to meet with us live, and the other half of them are still meeting with us, but they're remote. And one of the big challenges for us has been just that management of what do we do with students in a situation where some of them are by themselves and hearing everything, but then not really being able to be heard. And what does that do to motivation? And then versus some of the challenges that are happening in the building. Again, we actually put a plan together in our district. Our choir directors at both of our high schools put a plan together where we said 10 feet. We felt that we were following some of the college and university guidelines. And my teaching partner, who's here in the room, Beth O'Riordan's here. We worked together for a bunch of years now, and we decided that maybe 10 feet wasn't where we wanted to go, because although we felt that our school district was allowing us to be professionals and make decisions on behalf of our students, that didn't necessarily feel all that great to us, right? Freedom is not always what you want, right? When you're making decisions like this that might involve kids getting sick. And so we sort of took that 10 in our auditorium space and we made it more like 15. And I think many of us who've been in this hybrid world have been sort of with the tape measure and, really fun times, really, really great bonding time as a choir team. But we've started that. And of course, in our high school auditorium, which is a rather large auditorium, it seats nearly 1,300 people. Some of our students, especially our younger students, have had trouble listening and hearing and feeling like they could sing confidently, right? And then we're working with a situation where we're working again sort of with half-hour singing times and then moving to a secondary space. One of those spaces for some of our choirs during the day is our choir room, where all the risers have been taken out. We're actually sharing that secondary space with some of our band classes. So they need chairs and music stands, and we need not that. We would rather be standing. And so that's interesting. We have blue grids of painter's tape, and then we have green X's of painter's tape in different places. It's really kind of fun, kind of a hopscotch classroom. And then our other space, when the bands are using that the choir room as their secondary space, we've actually used a place that's in our school basement. Which is really kind of a depressing place to hold class. But honestly, the ceiling's a little lower, and the younger kids hear each other better. So we're trying to take what we can out of that and learn from that and make better each and every day. We're constantly looking at the number of students in our room because we know the number of students that our rooms can hold. That's fun and frustrating on a fairly regular basis for the two of us. This morning was a great example of that. It just was. All right, so that's kind of what's going on in our schools. I did prepare, 5 or 6 questions for the panel. But I guess as a team, we thought that you're here because you maybe have questions and you're bouncing ideas. Maybe you're sort of moving to a next stage. Looks like our school is going to move to a next stage again after spring break. We just don't know what that is yet, because that's fun. Why should we know everything ahead of time? We should just do. But so I guess maybe let's start with a question and answer. And we're going to let Steve tell us how we want to run that. Okay, Steve, what are your thoughts on?
Sure. So if you have a question for the panel, or if you have something that you'd like us to discuss, if you can go ahead and chat at me, just so I can keep track of everybody's questions and make sure that they get addressed by the panel in the time that we have. I know we're all kind of in a different teaching situation now. I know we just started bringing kids back hybrid. We're fully remote up till this week. So that is a new area for us as well. So if you have any questions that you'd like the panel to address, just go ahead and chat at me and we'll see what comes through. We'll take a minute or two.
I guess just while we're waiting for questions, I had kind of one for Frank. You had mentioned that your auditorium space is so massive. My initial thought is what is your current setup in there to where the kids can hear the piano, or like are you using a grand or are you using an electric plugged into the sound system to go out into the house? Just like what's your current setup?
Yeah, Andrew, we've tried some different things. We felt initially that it was important for us to be as far away from the students as possible. We just felt that was there was something about the optics of that seemed right at the time when we were trying to space 15 feet apart. And so we were on the stage. We're fortunate we have a very large grand on stage that's going to fill that room pretty well. And so students are able to hear that. We actually have mic packs that we use that we hate a lot, but it does give us the opportunity to be heard out into the room better. But that really doesn't help the sound that's coming back at us. Right? When you've got a freshman or a sophomore student or a student who's new to singing in a group, it's very hard to convince them that making more sound into sort of this vastness is really the direction they want to go. And so that's the way we've been working that. Recently, we've been playing around more We have it at our school kind of a lowered area in front of the stage. We use it as our orchestra pit when it's musical season, but it's not really below. It's not tucked under. It's not really lower. So for musical time, we actually just sort of build a fake wall in front of the first row of seats. But we've been using that pit area as a place where, where we use desks there. There's a nice computer setup, and when other events are happening, that podium is used sort of for presentation all the time. So we have access to that, and then we have an upright that's down there too. And so we've been playing around with the advantages of using both spaces. And I think if there's one thing that we've done fairly well as a choir team, it's we are wanting to remain flexible, and this idea of, well, what about this? What if we tried this? And everything's so crazy, and the students understand that their experience is so crazy this year. I think we've felt that they've given us latitude that way, and they've been really patient with us, so that when we forget to mute things in the Zoom room, or the transition from one thing to the next is kind of a nightmare, that's okay, right? It's going okay. And so, we'll say things like, well, we're just going to try this. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
If I can piggyback a little bit off of what Frank was saying, we're super fortunate to be in our auditorium as well. We also are doing the 10 feet in each direction. And it worked okay. And everything that Frank just said, I agree with 100%, especially the younger kids. So we decided to put up 8 microphones, standing mics. I only have, I think at my largest is about 15 kids. So generally I have enough mics for almost every kid, and we disinfect them between every single choir like it's the cleanest place in the school. And that was a challenge to get kids to want to step up to the mic, because they hadn't really sung, not really in a year. It had been a year, and then especially the younger ones, or my more shy kids. But at some point, much like what I think Frank and Beth are doing, it's like, listen, you guys, we're in it together. We're all going to sound a little froggy. My piano chops have gone away. Like, just sing. Let's just see what happens. And kind of gave them permission to be kind of obnoxiously loud in the house. And after about 2 weeks of that, the kids started saying, it actually sounds like a choir again. And the kids that are remote in are saying, oh my God, I can hear 3 parts. I can hear 4 parts. And so that, though it's not perfect, and though we're constantly trying it, that was so helpful just to have some sound, which is, I think that's for those of us that are fortunate to have that auditorium space. It's so cavernous, it's so hard for the kids. So we were really fortunate that our PAC director was like, hey, you want some mics? Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. So
Nikki, can I cut in on that thought too? I kind of think it's fortunate for some of you that are hybrid to have your kids from that hybrid perspective and be able to hear those 3 parts, like you said. Because when we started the year, I had one of my seniors come up and lead a piece. He's wanting to go into music ed. And so he took the front, and I went to replace his spot singing bass, and I was like, wow, this sucks. Like, you can't hear anything from their perspective. And so when I got that, I was like, okay, I need to give them an opportunity to hear things from my end. Because, I talked with that student, come up with a rehearsal plan, not realizing that he has a totally different mindset than his peers. And so I'll bring other kids down and say, all right, why don't you conduct warm-ups today? I'll play the piano, but, feel it from here. And it's one thing to feel it from the computer. You get to hear those 3 parts, but we all know, it's different to see it through the screen than to experience it in person. And I feel like my kids got more of a buy-in and started to trust this weird process more when they're like, oh, okay, it is actually clicking from down here. And it still sucks when you're part of the machine, but when you get to hear the final product live, it's like, wow, okay, it's actually something. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I mean, if you guys have an opportunity to bring your kids down to where you are and just let them, really validate that it's working to an extent. From their perspective, it's got to be hard. I love the mics that you got set up. I wish I had that equipment too, but I just like Frank said early in the process, like how can we get them to stay motivated and to stay or to trust that, you know, what we're saying is true. Like it sounds great, even though right now from your perspective it doesn't seem strong. I don't know. It's such a weird abstract place, I guess.
Steve, do you have any questions come in?
I do, and I actually want to make sure we get to some of these. I have about 6 so far. I'm going to take some liberties and combine some that are of similar topics here. But someone has asked, you know, they have 60-minute blocks, and they're singing for 30 minutes and doing not singing for another 30 minutes. And someone else has asked, you know, do you leave your room when the 30 minutes is up? Where do you go? How do you address having your classes, you know, back to back in the same room with the air change? So with that idea of, you know, spending 30 minutes singing, what happens with the other 30 minutes? Are there any enjoyable or worthwhile ideas for that non-singing time or those break times?
I'm going to bow out at answering this because we're on a full 8-period schedule, not on a block. So anybody that's got a block, go for it.
Yeah, I guess I can jump back in. I'm on block for middle school and high school. And I mentioned earlier, it's just a lot of like theory things. The way I have theory set up right now, I'm using a lot of Google Slides. And I don't want to make it seem like it's a cop out to make it more interactive to you know, like kill time necessarily. But I think it benefits those students that are quarantined to not be able to miss anything because we're doing paper pencil. They can still do it from home. So I've been playing around with a lot of like chord analysis at the high school level. And so I would make just kind of blank stabs on each Google slide, and they would have to manipulate moving whole notes to create different chords, whether it's inversions or adding flats, adding sharps to do the different qualities. It gives a richer depth to the audition skills. So they're not only like singing the tonalities of major, minor, diminished, augmented, but they're learning how to construct those, and the same thing with the minor scales. So I guess I'm kind of thankful in a way from a conductor's perspective to like a classroom teacher perspective that I'm getting to do things this year that I normally wouldn't or have the time to go in depth with because I'm so constricted to a performance schedule or we have to go to the next gig or whatever. So, I mean, I've just been trying to get creative with the theory stuff. And again, not to kill time, but to offer opportunities for students to engage in deeper theoretical concepts they normally wouldn't, you know, and then other things we could do beforehand is kind of discuss text painting ideas and kind of get the mindset geared towards rehearsal. All right, folks, before we put such and such piece together, let's talk about the symbolism now so that when we get into the auditorium, we use that 30 minutes for singing, you know, unlike we usually would do, warm up, hit a piece hard, and then you go into the thicker piece, take some time, and then you close with the quick success, you know, the typical rehearsal setup. But I feel like that's just shot out the window this year and you've got to structure it differently. So that's just kind of where I'm at for me. Lots of theory, but just making sure they're staying engaged with it.
We're on 80-minute blocks, and honestly, I think if there's an opportunity for you to find and use some other secondary space, I think that has provided us with the most options. And we're still not always happy with the options that we have, but I think it has definitely given us more ideas. A couple of other things that we've been kind of about are in our choirs, our students have been used to for a long time. Hearing, we've had this tradition of doing Friday listening, and that involves actually some journaling. And so that sort of listening assignment is not new to our students. It's taken on a slightly new form. Beth took a class over the summer, and we've been using Pear Deck as a result. We have found Pear Deck is really helpful for us, not just in that moment where we might be listening and there's an automatic opportunity for students to give feedback and sort of do that writing, and we can read what students are saying, which is nice because it allows us to kind of build a bit of a conversation there. But not just that. We take other opportunities during the rehearsal then too, especially when we were all remote and we didn't need to worry about the switching part of things. We could move rehearsal pieces around and we could have students react to, like, literally, how did that go for you in the Zoom room today? You know, what was challenging? What do we need to do next? And the interface in Pear Deck allows students to reach out in that way, and it allows us to check for their engagement too, right? When we have students who just aren't doing that, we know that there's an issue, and it's a little bit easier for us to figure out, okay, these are the students we need to watch a little bit more closely and maybe check in with them another way. So that use of Pear Deck has been important for us in both the remote environment and a little less so in the hybrid environment. But some of that has to do with the fact that now that we're hybrid, we're trying very hard to not have our students who are with us open up a piece of technology, right? Like finally we get to be together, so we need to value that. And what that has meant a little bit is that, and our students understand that, and we've said, like, philosophically, this is where we sit, that, you know, we're going to pay attention first to the fact that we can do some group music making, and that's going to mean that this is going to feel a little bit less interactive to you on the days that you are remote. But what that means is when you're with us, that's going to make that a little bit easier. The people we lose in that, the people who lose the most there are the students whose families have made the decision that they're going to stay fully remote. And I think they've been the toughest group for us to work with and figure out how we're going to make this a good experience for them. But I think those two ideas are have been helpful to us. And then, you know, in our situation, some of our sight reading exercises, you know, we might stack those in the first part of class, but not sing them. So there's been a lot more rhythm-only sight singing as we've used Sight Reading Factory. And honestly, that's still been good work, and the students are working it and they're getting better. So they're like different ways to sort of trick that system so that we can do as much singing as we can, but then use the spaces effectively.
All right. We have several other questions here, actually. So the next topic I think that would be interesting for us to address a little bit is how, there's a question here, how are people recruiting to younger students? You know, particularly if choir is not happening at those feeder schools or in the younger grades. How are folks recruiting?
The silence is deafening.
I will I'm do 6 through 12, so I'm blessed that I get to I am my own feeder program for the high school. And then to get into the middle school, I'm relying on my grades. I have one grade school teacher, and she's a former student, and we have a great relationship. She actually is the show choir assistant with me, so we work together all week. I'm relying on her to build that at the grade schools. Normally we do a grade school tour with our show choir, and we're not going to be able to do that this year. So I'm relying on her to recruit for me in the grade schools. And then again, I get to recruit my own 6th, 7th, 8th into the high school.
We have a real interesting situation in the southwest burbs of Chicago. We have 3 junior highs that feed in, public junior highs, and then 3 or 4 parochial private schools. Of the 3 junior highs, 2 of the choir directors said, no, thank you, and decided to take a leave for the year. I will sit here while all of your mouths drop open. Yep, many different reasons, you know, not going to judge any of them, but that tanked the entire vocal program in the entire district for the junior highs. The wife of one of the band directors in our high school district has taken over one of the choirs, and one of the other band directors in the other school has taken over the choir. I don't wish that on anybody. I have no idea how to even start engaging those kids. I've reached out and I've gotten no response from the directors. And my guess is because they're so underwater that even contemplating responding to the high school director is legit the last thing on their minds. If there's a way I could circumvent them and go right to the parents, I would. But right now I'm just like, y'all, whatever is coming into Sandburg next year, I'm just going to do with it when I can and just start like attacking people in the cafeteria. So that's where we are. That's all I have to say.
I think we all need to admit that part of this next thing, right? We're kind of treading water now and just trying to keep afloat. But I think the next part may be even harder for us. The two feeders that send to our high school also have had a lot of trouble operating at all. And the directors of those programs have made an effort. But I think when we're talking about fully remote learning, we're talking about hybrid, and they need the before school program or the after school time to do other things, it's been very difficult for them to do very much. And that is going to have a negative impact on our numbers next year. And I fear down the road as well. And so I don't know that, like, I don't feel I have answers for that at all. I think that that's the next phase of this. And in my way of thinking, I think there's a little bit of hold on to your hats, everyone. Let's see how we can ride this storm out. But honestly, I mean, if I wanted to look at that more optimistically, I think there's been a testing regime in our public schools that has been problematic and has hurt, I think, elementary and junior high programs even more than our high school programs. And so I think we've seen a little bit of that over the past 10 years or so. And it seems like just at the moment when maybe they're taking their foot off the gas a little bit with respect to the way that testing goes. Now we have this to deal with. I wish us all good luck. I do. I wish I had more answers.
I think that's a really good point that Frank's bringing up. I think we have to think long haul. The next year or two are going to be tough. We should have been at 179 kids starting the school year this year. We lost 30 right off the bat. We've lost a total of, I think, 47 even during then, on top of it during the year. And it's for many different reasons. Some of them are my older kids who just need time. They just can't have it in their schedule. The mental, emotional breakdowns are just, even to say it out loud is tough. We almost lost 3 kids this year in my program. One of the upsides, though, is I have a lot of kids in the program that have siblings. And so they've been talking to their siblings about it, like, hey, choir is still happening at Sandburg. So even though you might not have it at all or only have it one day a week at the junior high, please come. We can make that work. We're contemplating doing some kind of an outdoor camp, if it's possible, in August, and inviting any of the incoming freshmen to hang out with chamber singers. Just kind of taking a cue from band a little bit, honestly, and just saying, let's just introduce some of these kids, say, hey, this is available. But yeah, I don't know if there's an answer. Flexibility is the answer.
All right. So the remaining questions that we have here kind of center on a couple of similar topics. One is masks and another is performances. And then I would say lastly is just bringing kids together socially. So on the topic of masks, we have, so someone's singer's mask just arrived this week, and we want to know, are you using specialized choir masks? And if so, how often do you expect them to be washed? If the students are only wearing them like 30 minutes one time a week, is it necessary for students to take them home? There's some fears that those masks will never come back or get lost. So just like special equipment, real quick.
We are not using special masks. The kids provide their own masks that they wear for school. For the band, we did get special masks that have the slit in them, and they do pick those up, and we wash them at the school every day so that they have clean ones. I do have a singer's mask, but because I have bifocals, I can't use it because, and if any of your kids have reading issues, it sticks out past where the bifocal needs to look. So I can't actually use a singer's mask myself.
Our kids just have their regular masks that they use. Band also has all the proper filters and things on the ends of the horns. It's amazing. I should take a picture of them one day.
Our students are using their regular masks as well. Beth and I are looking into some singers' masks for our students. There might be dollars available to us through our administration as they try to find dollars for some of those things. We don't know. It's kind of too early. We're getting a supply in, and we're going to see what we think about them and if we think that they'll work for all of our kids. We are definitely seeing some masks that don't quite make it all the way through rehearsal this way, right? And then we have that, the nose is connected to the mouth, folks, kind of issue. And it's not that they're being bad. It's that they're just not great fitting masks, is what it comes down to. Because kids, again, are providing their own. The district did provide some, but they weren't of the highest quality, and high school students lose things.
All right, and then also on the subject of masks, someone writes, I found that students are constantly exhausted in the hybrid schedule because they don't have a consistent bedtime, or they don't wake up before noon on remote days. What are some ways that we can get students to wake up and engage with, in music making with each other? With the masks on, the students are less willing to interact with each other, especially if their friends aren't in the same hybrid group as them. So it boils down to, what are you doing to bring the kids together socially? And how are you encouraging kids to sing out with the masks on? And Nikki, I know you touched on that a little bit before, but bringing kids together socially and getting them to sing out with masks, some strategies for success.
So it's such a big question, right? It's such a big one. One thing I'll say about the masks, we learned early on, my kids show up usually in one of two masks, and I see them alternating. I do the same thing, because there are some masks that I have that are easier for me to be able to sing through and breathe through than others. My kids are exhausted physically. I'm exhausted physically having to sing and speak through a mask all day. So there's a little bit of that. There's also a mental frustration that goes along with that. There's also claustrophobia that goes along with that, and the frustration that why can't I just sing the way I always used to sing? And then that brings them down the rabbit hole of, but last year I sounded so good and now I sound like crap. And so there's a lot more, I feel like there's a lot more, I feel like a psychologist. I'm not a choir director right now. I'm a therapist and a cheerleader, a lot more than a choir director. And we do a lot of, we've played Among Us a ton of times. We do a lot of games, breakout rooms. We broke kids into little choir families, and we do that every once in a while so they could do getting to know you, right? They could do all of that kind of stuff. Our 4 cohorts are based on the alphabet. So sometimes all I've got are sopranos and 1 bass, and so it's really difficult. It's really difficult. Now, because we've been doing the hybrid thing for so long, and we have only a handful, I'd say maybe a quarter of my kids are fully remote, like fully remote. When I set up my laptop on a podium for all the kids who are remote that day, I walk away from it and I let all the kids that are coming in go up to hey guys, how you doing? They talk to them, they talk back and forth. I give them the first few minutes, sometimes to just say hey, or the last few minutes to just interact with each other while they're, some are on stage and some are hybrid. We had our classes. I love that so many of you went to maybe like from having 8 or 9 periods to block. And I know that that's a challenge as well. We had like 44-minute periods and they got cut down to 35 minutes. I have 3 lunch choirs that are usually 22 minutes long. So it's split A section, B section, half lunch, half choir. 22 minutes went down to 19. And I'll tell you, those 3 minutes are a lot of minutes. So allowing the kids to actually talk, and some days where it's like, you can just feel, you know your kids, and you can just feel that energy when they come in, and "Ooh, we are not getting stuff singing done today. They need to rant." Like, allowing some of my kids to rant has been amazing, and that has bonded them like crazy. I keep them constrained so they're not throwing teachers or students or parents under a bus. They're a little more apt to know that there are other students who feel the same way they do, because they're up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning doing homework. And these are not my kids who are blowing it off. These are my kids who are in AP classes. Complaining about their parents not understanding the amount of work that they're getting, the teachers that they have in academics not understanding how much work they have, being a sounding board, doing all the things that you do as choir directors. Like, it's just so much more amped up right now. Just lean into all that stuff. We got the choir kids, man. They're all about emotion. Lean into it. That's what's sort of been working for us, and I have let every guard down and anything of me being Mr. Denofrio. I'm like, whatever, guys. Yeah, it sucks. I'm right there with you. And they're like, what? Really? Is it bad for you? Like, yes. And then we talk about that, and they see you as sort of a little bit more human than and there's days that I've fallen apart. And I'm like, guys, can we just sit and talk for a second? They're like, yes. So some of that has been super, super helpful. Also, some journaling. I think Frank was saying that weekly journaling with my kids has been a game changer for their mental health. A game changer. They go back and they read what happened 2 weeks ago and go, oh my God, why did I even write that? But just seeing their own progress, it's just been huge. Anything and everything. Like, there's anything you can do for them. Everything. I don't know.
And I will say we're just finishing up our solo and ensemble section. I'm hosting for IHSA for our area, and videos are due today. But that really allowed me to work in very small groups. I told them that this year ensembles were no more than 4, so that we could easily rehearse those in the social distance. But it also allowed me to work with them and get them comfortable singing through their masks. One thing I was most surprised about was I gave them the option for their solos. You can record it here, but you will have to wear your mask, or you can record it at home without your mask. And almost all of them wanted to do it at school because they're now getting more comfortable and they wanted the live performance, not at home. So getting that individual work with them was really helpful in getting them to sing out.
Okay. The next question here sort of deals with performances. And are there people on the panel who are doing live performances? Has that been successful? What's best practice for that? And what is your administration expecting with regard to performances?
Nothing live yet at Downers Grove North on the choir side or the band side or the orchestra side. What we've done is a lot of compilation of audio and video recordings, and we have a new auditorium manager this year who has some experience in that way. Of course, he's just one person, and so that's limited what's really allowed to be on these concerts. We've been limited that way, and so a lot of our choirs we try to find sort of this middle area where the music is challenging for the younger kids and maybe not too terribly easy for the older kids, trying to find that middle to make that work. We are going to try. We have a different safety plan in place for our musical. We're at the end of April. We're gonna put on Freaky Friday, and of course, every day is a Freaky Friday right now. It's nuts. I will admit to this group, I'm not entirely comfortable with my role here on our show, just because I think it's hard when you're working with a team of professionals who have different needs. Some of them are trying to build a set, and some of them are trying to build drama with people on stage. And I think it's hard to have the same viewpoint of what good safety measures mean, right? And I've perhaps been a little more conservative than some of my colleagues. And I think that's been easier for Beth and me because we see the world in kind of the same way, and so that's been easier than for a musical. But allegedly we're gonna do it inside, and we're gonna allow maybe 50 people in our audience as well. We're gonna take the pit orchestra and move them out to the band room and just sort of pipe all that music in. And our conductor will be on a big TV screen overhanging the balcony, and that's what we're gonna do. I don't know. I don't know what that's gonna look like at the end of April. But who knows? I think things are changing again. I think school districts are once again trying to change the rules in an effort to get more kids back in school. I think, Nikki, what you said about kids and the fact that they're struggling socially, emotionally, mentally, I think that's a really important thing to remember. And I think that even though we might not always agree with what our school administrators are doing in terms of, it feels to some of us like they're pushing us back too fast. I really do feel that hearts are in the right place, and they're feeling pressure. It's true in their communities, but I think there are a lot of good reasons why kids need to be in school, and so I've not been one to be super critical of really anyone's school administration that way, because I think what they're doing is hard. They're not being necessarily led in the strongest way by public health professionals in all cases, and so they're kind of improvising too. And you know, I don't know. I'm hoping for the best, obviously.
This question is very, very difficult. I sing in a professional choir, I direct a community choir, and I work at the high school. In all three situations, this question's come up, and in all situations, it's been, we can figure out how to practice safely, but no one can figure out how to perform safely. So we have not done any choir performances live. We've done a lot of recording, a lot of editing. When we were hybrid, we would record the two sections and blend them together so that it was both groups singing together. And then our musical will be live streaming it with a very limited audience. Each cast member will get 2 tickets for family members to watch, and then we'll be streaming on YouTube.
We got the go-ahead, the green light from our admin for all 3 disciplines to record live on stage and then have our district videographer stitch it all together and then put it out on our YouTube channel at a later date. The kids are thrilled to be able to come in, just to be able to sing. They're going to be distanced like crazy, same thing that we have normally. The option was given to the students and the families that if they feel safe coming in, great. If you don't feel safe coming in, great. Their grade is not tied to whether or not they're coming in. Their grade is tied to the preparation going through. There were definitely students who felt gypped, I don't have a better word, who have chosen to stay fully remote, who now don't feel part of that process. So there was some navigation of that had to happen. And that was a really difficult conversation just for me personally, just to have with all of my kids, that like, listen, we really want all of you here. We really want all of you safe. We cannot, and it's a life, took it as a teachable moment. I'm going to pull a Ross Kellen right now. And this was a teachable moment of like, sometimes in life, there are going to be circumstances where you have to make a decision that's right for you, that is maybe going to prohibit you from doing something you really, really want to do. We are also, just I think, given where our community is and where our COVID numbers are, we are looking at the potential for a live concert in May, outdoor, kids masked, parents in the lawn, Ravinia style. You do what you're going to do as a family. You want to stay away from people? Great. You want to be right on top of people? Stay away from us. Like, great. So we're hoping for that. And I know that a lot of my parents, they have reached out to say, we're not super comfortable sending our kid who's fully remote in to record for this concert without an audience, but we will give consideration to sending them masked, distanced, live, outside, May, that's months from now. So what we're trying to do, at least at Sandburg, is not, we had so many carrots dangled in front of our kids last year. It's only going to be 2 weeks. Seniors are going to have a graduation. You're going to have a prom. They got none of it. And we talked about that a lot with our kids. And I'm super honest with them all the time. Like, I don't want to dangle a carrot and then have to take it away. We are hoping for this. Let's prep for it. If it changes, we'll change with it. So that's where we're at. So we're all on stage next week. Choir, orchestra are both recording next week, band the week after, and then we're just kind of hoping for the best. We have no idea what it's going to sound like, because instrumentation and vocal is like voice parts a little bit weird. So stay tuned to the Sandburg YouTube channel.
All right. Two more quick ones. You've got about 6 minutes left here. This is a quick question here. What percentage of your students are you seeing fully remote?
I've probably got a quarter. Probably a quarter of my kids are fully remote.
I have about a fifth.
I would say we're probably at a quarter and rising. The trend I don't like is the rising part, because I think as some students and some families are seeing what we're able to do and what we're not able to do for in-person school, I think they're kind of frustrated, and they're just kind of saying chuck it, and that's another thing that's difficult to deal with. A lot of times parents are making that decision for their kids, and the kids don't like it, but they don't have a choice in the matter.
All right. Yeah, about 2/3 of mine are fully remote still. So, and then the last one is with regard to repertoire. Someone is planning a concert and where different groups are learning the same piece, right? And for those of us in the hybrid model, like how can we work to keep those different groups or different ensembles, maybe in a different hybrid setting, working concurrently, those in-person groups, at the same pace?
We've found some success in part of the weekly journaling. This took me all the way until third quarter, so please don't think that this was like something that I just pulled right out of my hat. Flip grid assignments, chunks of the tune, video yourself, journal. What are you doing well? What do you need to work on? How are you going to fix it? And then free write. And then that was my way of being able to actually keep everybody accountable all at the same time. Even for the kids who are fully remote, for the kids that are hybrid, for everybody, that worked out okay. It was just a little bit tough for the kids. They're like, oh my God, I got to video myself. Yeah, well, you're on video for your entire life. So yeah, so yes, but they got over it in the first couple of weeks and they were okay. But that, for us, that seems to be working decently well.
And one just came through right here. How are you encouraging students who are remote to turn in recordings if they have no interest?
I think it's one thing to give an assignment. It's another thing to get a kid to turn in an assignment, right? When motivation is tough all over. I think there's still this understanding that we're trying to move forward together, right? We used an old Union tune to kind of organize ourselves at the beginning of the year, which is essentially just a round that we ended up re-engineering and rearranging called Step by Step. And we were able to kind of get out in front with that tune, and we thought this might be an organizing principle for us, and we made t-shirts and the whole thing, and that absent choir robes, our t-shirts have become our uniforms for our concerts, and I think that's helped some kids. I think it's tough. I think it's tough.
For my remote students, we've been working on solos, and so each week they have to turn in a video that we then talk about and work on. And it, as it's been said, at first it was tough, and I let them start with audio. Just send me an audio first, and then okay, now this week I need to see a video, and then we've progressed, and then they all had to turn one in this week for us to submit for contests. So. It was a process. It's taken since January, but we all got videos in this week.
On a tangent, to circle back to the question, I think So I asked my kids one day, just out of the blue, like, guys, like Nikki said, this year sucks, and I'm just gonna have a raw conversation. Like, why, despite the chance to be able to walk out the door, you decided to come back this year? Like, why are you here? And so we had that heartfelt discussion, and a lot of what the kids had contributed had absolutely nothing to do with music. And a lot, and some of them did. Like, I love the sounds, I love the, schmoopy schmoopy, but a large chunk of that conversation was about the culture that we built in the room, the friendships, the bonding, the everything. That's not what the content is. And I think to go back to another question, about recruitment and stuff, if we are willing to put ourselves out there on social media, on uh, advertising that culture, advertising you as a person, not Mr. Gallegos, but just me and my silliness, my emotions, my just me as a raw person, to get those students to buy in. And maybe they're just afraid that, and I don't want to phrase this the wrong way and like ruffle feathers, but maybe it's the students afraid to put themselves out to you as the director. And it might just be a culture thing. And again, that's kind of a controversial statement. I don't mean it to sound that way. But maybe the focus shouldn't be on getting the kids to turn it in, but rather get them comfortable to be able to start that process and teach them that in this environment, it's process over product. And we can't expect the product if that atmosphere and that culture is not there to even create it in the first place. And again, I don't want to like, ruffle feathers or whatever, but we're in a totally new environment. Like, everyone's a first year teacher here. So I just feel like we need to reshape our thinking to where it's not what we used to know. So it's almost like we shouldn't expect what we normally would expect. It's like an entirely new framework. But from my perspective, with the chamber choir and getting our madrigal thing done, we did a slideshow. It was supposed to be our 30th anniversary. So I had asked community members for pictures to all the way back to, the 80s. And I found out it went back to the 70s. Like, it's deeper than 30 years. This year just happened to be the 30th annual, but it's gone back further than that. And my kids really enjoyed that richness, that history. And it was that motivation that gave them the buy-in. It was that, I guess, as Nikki said, it was that carrot. Although I didn't intentionally mean to dangle it, it gave them some kind of motivation to go after. So I don't know. Maybe carrots are good as long as they can reach them in the end.
Something really quickly that I'd just like to share. It had never dawned on me, though I knew this, and I know all of you know this. It never dawned on me that under these circumstances, I have students who cannot sing at home. They have siblings, they have parents who ridicule them, who are not supportive of it. And that was a blaring light this year for me. So I have a lot of students who legitimately cannot sing at home unless somebody's not there, or they go take a walk somewhere, or if that sibling is gone, they go in the garage and they sing in their parents' car. And so I get the quietest little recordings. So I've made it a point to like keep that in the back of my mind, that when we have done these things, I reach out to everybody and say, listen, if you have a circumstance at home, no matter what it is, that is going to be tough for you, shoot me a text, send me an email, let me know what your issue is. We'll make an accommodation and we'll figure that out. That was, I think, the most heartbreaking thing this year, realizing that, oh my God, so many of those kids that like they have it in them, they can't do it at home. And that's what we do and offer for them is their place. So what Curtis and Frank and Andrew keep saying about that culture, right? We're the only ones that give them that. And if they're fully remote, oh my God, they have none of it. And they see it every day, but they can't get to it. Those are the ones that like we have to reach out to. And any kind of accommodation of like, I understand, let's see what we can do. And now I've got those kids like, oh my God, you actually thought about my life situation. keep that in the back of your mind for anybody who's getting into this kind of stuff, that you're going to have kids that whatever their situation is just going to prohibit it. It's not that they don't want to. Some of them don't want to, but like some of them really, really want to, but they just can't. They just can't.
All right. We are just about out of time here, or actually a little bit over time. But I want to say thanks first to you for all of your questions and everything that you've sort of provided to guide this discussion tonight. So thank you all for being here, sharing some of your insights and questions about this process that we're all going through together. I also want to say thanks to Frank and Nikki and Andrew and Curtis for just being here and sharing some of their experiences from this year as well too. So yes, give them a hand.